so you will have a paper with some apples on it, and then at your table there will be a tray with a stamp pad and some stamps. And there's a couple things to know about stamps before we use them on our paper. And first, we have to take the lid off the stamp pad if it's not already off. And then we want to make sure the stamp pad is in a place where all of our friends at the table can reach it. And our tables are kind of big, so we might need to take turns. Maybe you and the person sitting next to you stamps a couple stamps, and then you pass it to the next pair of students for them to take a turn stamping. Some stamps have a picture on them. And you can see this stamp has a picture right here. And this is a stamp of a reptile. And I want to look at that picture so that I know which way to push my stamp down on my paper. That's a preview of what my stamp will look like when it goes on my paper. If I see that this reptile picture here is upside down, that means my stamp will also be upside down on my paper. It's the same for these letters. So you can see this is a letter E. So if I want to stamp an E, I'm going to hold it just like this and stamp it down on my paper. If my E is going this way or it's backwards, when I stamp it down on my paper, it's going to be backwards or sideways. All right. Some of our stamps don't have a picture on them, a preview of what it's going to look like. So you'll want to look at the stamp and decide how you want to stamp it on your paper. And then that's the way you're going to hold it in your hand. So this one is a leaf. And maybe it doesn't matter how I stamp that one, or maybe I want to make sure I'm holding it a certain way. So I'm going to start with the leaf, and I'm going to use my green stamp, and you want to press wiggle, 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 press wiggle, 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 and then you're going to go over to your paper, and you're going to push, wiggle, 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 and lift it up. And if you do it, then you'll get a stamp. And then every time you stamp on your paper, you want to go back into the ink. So press in my ink, wiggle, 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 pick it up, and then I'm going to put it on my paper, wiggle, 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 and then lift it up. Okay, let's try this reptile. I'm going to wiggle, wiggle, wiggle in the stamp. Want to make sure we get ink all over it. And then I'm going to stamp my reptile down here, walking across the bottom of my paper. Wiggle, 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 and pick it up. And then I have him stuck on my page. This stamp just has some dots on it. Gives some interesting dots on your picture. So we'll push it in, wiggle, 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 and then we can push it down on our page. Wiggle, 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 and lift it up. And look, I've got some dots. This one is a butterfly, so maybe I want to have a butterfly flying in the sky. Wiggle, 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 and push. Wiggle, 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 and lift it up. Okay, so you get to explore the stamps at your table, and we need to make sure we're sharing with our friends. So we only have one stamp pad per table. There might be a few extras, so you take a turn and then it needs to be someone else's turn.